Good evening and thanks for joining me tonight. I am Ohimai Amaize, your anchor on the show. You're watching The Fix, broadcasting live from New York. I have a guest tonight who is a lawyer. He's a lawyer and a human rights activist. But before I introduce him, I'd like to provide some context to what we're going to be talking about tonight. In Nigeria, the controversies surrounding the EndSARS protests are actually far from over. On Tuesday, Justice John Soho, the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court, said that the court did not freeze the accounts of EndSARS protesters, but those of corporate bodies under suspicion of money laundering. Very interesting. Justice Soho said that those who made such allegations of the court freezing accounts of EndSARS protesters were being uncharitable to the court. According to him, the Central Bank of Nigeria approached the court seeking an order to freeze certain accounts of corporate bodies, and names of individuals were not attached to the applications. This is what he actually said, quote, "I assigned those cases and no individual's name was mentioned. 3 months before the protest, the CBN kept bringing applications, almost in their hundreds, based on what they call deliberate resolve to ruin the economy through money laundering. So if it was the EndSARS people that were involved in the activity undercover, then it is unfortunate for people to begin to call and vilify the court, making damaging allegations against the court," unquote. Soho added that if any of the accounts belonged to any EndSARS protester, it was a mere coincidence. In November, Nigeria's Central Bank obtained an ex parte order from the Federal High Court, this same court presided over by Justice Soho, to freeze the accounts of 19 individuals and a company linked to EndSARS, total of 20 entities, 19 individuals and one company. The accounts were frozen based on this court order that was granted by Justice Soho. So to discuss this issue with me tonight is Inibehe Effiong, a lawyer and human rights activist. Thanks for joining me on the show tonight. I just provided some background to this recent development about EndSARS.
Yes, please. Yes, please. I can hear you.
It's really interesting because the judge who granted the order is now saying something else entirely from what was initially reported. What exactly, as a lawyer, what exactly do you think is going on here? How would you interpret this new development?
Thank you for having me on your program. I welcome listeners to this edition. Now, I want to correct the point you made. I got you clearly. I got you clearly. I got your question clearly. This party order was not granted by my Lord, Honorable Justice Soho, who I hold in high esteem. I've done a matter before His Lordship, the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court. You can do your findings, but he's one of the most respected judges in Nigeria. Indeed, when you appear before him, you know that this is not a judge who can be easily intimidated or harassed by the government or any other person. So, speaking from experience with this judge, Justice Soho, I do believe that he's a man of honor. I believe he's one of the most cerebral judicial officers that we have in the country. Now, the ex parte order was not granted by him. It was granted by a different judge. So I do not know whether that comment was necessary. The comment by my lord was actually necessary. There is no judge in Nigeria that is presiding over a matter that is allowed to comment publicly in that matter. So my lord only spoke as the head of the Federal High Court in the country. If he was the judge who is handling that matter, there is nothing that would have prompted him to make a public statement. It is against the code of conduct for judicial officers. But having said that, what I'm going to say is this. If the CBN, the Central Bank of Nigeria, being the applicant, the litigant in whose favor this order was granted, was given, if they had misrepresented facts to the court, or if they had suppressed facts, which is what is being stated, what is being canvassed by Mr. Femi Falana, SN, and other lawyers who are involved in the applications that have been filed to vacate the freezing order, the court will expectedly or is expected by law to vacate the order freezing those accounts, because these orders were made pursuant to an ex parte application. And the law is that in an ex parte application, the applicant in his affidavit must not suppress facts and must not misrepresent facts. So if facts were suppressed or misrepresented, on that basis alone, the court can set aside the order that was made in favor of the CBN. I, as a person, believe that those orders should never have been granted. I am convinced that CBN did not have a justifiable basis for even making that application. Because if you've read their reaction to the motion or notice to vacate the ex parte order, you will see that they did not really have any legal basis to seek for those orders in the first place. All that they are saying is that these accounts are subject of investigation, that these accounts were possibly used for money laundering. I find that very ridiculous. I find that very ludicrous. You cannot tamper with the account of an individual, of a citizen, on the basis of suspicion. There has to be reasonable facts. There have to be a basis in law. There has to be evidence to show that that account is possibly being used to commit an offense. And I also quarrel with the power of the CBN under the Banking and Other Financial Institutions Act, Banks and Other Financial, under the BOVIA, Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act, to seek that kind of order. Because as it has been shown, CBN had started freezing people's accounts before even going to court. What that shows is that this application was made in bad faith. This application was propelled by a desire and a propensity to persecute, by a desperation to victimize protesters. This victimization is still ongoing. These are protesters that they account freezing about the same time that people are being stopped from traveling. You would have also read on Twitter yesterday about the lady who said that the Nigerian immigration has denied her passport because she has been blacklisted. So we have what I can clearly say is a full-blown dictatorship in the country. So what is happening is that CBN, like the police, like the army, and other key institutions of state have been politicized, are being deployed to achieve a partisan agenda. That clearly explains what has happened. And for me, this is very embarrassing for Nigeria, that the apex regulatory body, in fact, I dare say the main regulatory body for the funds and financial institutions in Nigeria, the Central Bank of Nigeria, that is supposed to be insulated from politics, that is supposed to be above board, was used to clearly achieve what was a sinister agenda of the federal government. It's not supposed to be so. So there is no basis for this order being granted. You cannot criminalize protests. You cannot accuse protesters of engaging in terrorism. So this order should never have been granted. I see it as a stain on the integrity of our judiciary. I see it as an abuse of our judicial process, and I am hoping that the judges who are involved in this case will be circumspect, because this is the time that institutions in Nigeria that are supposed to defend democracy should sit up. We cannot allow a situation where the courts will be used as a dumping ground for executive impunity, or as an avenue for legalizing the illegality of the executive, or for legitimizing the illegitimacy of the executive, which is what the CBN sought to do.
Yeah, I hear from what you are saying a situation that looks like the judiciary is under the overwhelming influence of the presidency, the executive. And that is disturbing, because what that tells me is the chances are very slim for anyone who really wants to seek justice in this sort of situation. Because if the courts in the first place that are supposed to be, as we usually say in Nigeria, the last hope of the common man, if the courts are already involved in this type of injustice, what is the hope for some of these people whose accounts have been frozen?
I will have to be honest with you. I am very troubled. I am very alarmed by the increasing deployment of the judicial process to achieve sinister purposes by the executive arm of government. The judiciary in Nigeria is currently being suffocated by a regime that does not pretend that it is a dictatorship, by a regime that is determined to ruin the country, by the regime that is determined to destroy all key institutions in this country. This is not limited to the freezing of the accounts of the EndSARS protesters. We have also seen cases where magistrates across the country are granting frivolous detention orders in favor of the SSS and the police. We have seen situations where people are being remanded, people are being detained, and courts are giving very long adjournments to hear application, which is supposed to be clearly accelerated, which is supposed to be given speed, which is supposed to be attended to expeditiously. This is supposed to be habeas corpus. And if you understand what habeas corpus is, that is in the nature of a fundamental right, when the liberty of a citizen is at stake. And you have the courts. For example, there's a person who is said to have posted something on Facebook against the President Buhari, and he was taken to court. The court adjourned his matter till March 2021. Somebody that has been kept in illegal detention for several months, an application has been filed for his release, and a magistrate is adjourning the matter to March 2021. It doesn't make any sense to me. And we lawyers should be totally ashamed that we are now living under a situation where we see some judges, not all judges, so few judges and magistrates in the country making themselves punching bags of the executive, making themselves willing tools of impunity. This is not supposed to be so. I am hoping that the judges are paying attention.
In November, one of the lead EndSARS protesters, Eramosele Adene, was charged with criminal incitement, cyber stalking, provoking breach of public peace, and conduct likely to cause breach of peace. More than 300 persons are still in detention nationwide, according to a recent report by Reuters. These are people who were detained during the EndSARS protests. My question is, what does the law say about protests? With this type of charges, criminal incitement, cyber stalking, breach of public peace, is there any situation where this sort of charges can stand in a court of law?
Let me be very blunt with you. The papers on which these charges are drafted have more value than the charges themselves. These are not really criminal charges in the real sense of the word. These are not charges properly so-called. These are just some pretentious attempts to show compliance with the rule of law. These so-called charges can never survive under the fire of cross-examination. I have been involved in defending protesters for a number of years now, and I can tell you confidently that in all those cases, we have always been vindicated. We have always defeated the state. We have always defeated the police. Go and look at history. Cite just one case. I challenge you. One case where a protester was arrested, charged to court, and convicted. Just one. Just one. So what they know what they are doing. All that they are doing is just to use the court as an avenue for impunity. This is not just about the EndSARS. It happens every day. I have defended protesters in Akwa Ibom, in Abuja, in Ogun State, and other parts of the country. And in all those cases, those charges have always been thrown out. You cannot criminalize protest. You cannot turn protest to an act of terrorism. You cannot say that somebody wants to breach peace. And let me tell you something. In the case of Charles Oputa, an Inspector General of Police and others, the case of Charlie Boy, which I handled at the Federal High Court, before my Lord Justice Soho. That was why I started by cautioning that I have experience with this judge. I have appeared before this judge. In that case, the police made an argument, a funny argument, and a ridiculous one indeed, that they had intelligence report that hoodlums, in quotes, were going to hijack the protests, that there was going to be a breakdown of law and order. That was the argument. And my replies was very simple. That is why you are known as the Nigerian police force. That is why the state has monopoly of violence. That even when you are convinced, even when you have so-called mystical, so-called superfluous intelligence report, fictional intelligence report, that hoodlums will hijack the protest, you cannot disrupt. You cannot stop a protest preemptively. Because it preempts that there will be violence. The court agreed with me that even when you believe that there will be breakdown of law and order, you are supposed to be there to ensure that there is no breakdown of law and order. And that is also in line with the spirit and letters of Section 94, Subsection 4 of the Electoral Act, as amended in 2015, which clearly states that the role of the police during political rallies, protests and processions and so on shall be limited to provision of security to the protesters. Therefore, the police has a statutory obligation to defend and protect every person that goes out to protest. It is a dereliction of their statutory responsibility for them to say, we want to stop people from protesting simply because there will be breakdown of law and order. Just yesterday, some people wanted to protest in Akwa Ibom, a group called the Next of Kin of Late Primary School Teachers, who have been fighting for the entitlement. They were summoned by the Commissioner of Police Office, and they told them not to protest because, in quotes, the situation is volatile in the state. The situation is volatile. I told them, go ahead, disregard the illegal order. And they went ahead today. They protested in front of the government house just today. No hoodlums, no bandit hijacked the protest. So this is a notorious, inexcusable reason that the police has consistently preferred for disrupting protests. But the right to protest is constitutional. That is what Section 39 of the Constitution says, that guarantees freedom of expression. That is the spirit and letters of Section 41, that guarantees the right to peaceful assembly. As long as protest is peaceful, no police, no military officer, no army has the right to stop people from protesting. So this is my assurance to you, and you can take this home. All these fraudulent charges that they are filing will be thrown out. I can give you 100% assurance.
That's really reassuring for people who are watching and for people who participated in the EndSARS protests. Some of them still in detention as we speak, in prisons, in police stations across the country. But are you currently representing any of the individuals whose accounts were frozen or any of those arrested during the protests?
Not directly. Not directly. What I can confirm to you is that the bulk of them, at least 80 to 90% of those whose accounts were frozen, they are being represented by a team of lawyers led by Mr. Femi Falana SN, who I'm very close to, who is my mentor, and I can assure you that I'm going to be involved in those cases as we proceed.
Right.
Indeed, I was supposed to be with them in court at the last date, the last time the court sat, but because I had another trial at the Federal High Court in Lagos, so I couldn't get into Abuja to join them. But I'm going to be part of those cases. Any civil, any litigation that has to do with the rights, defense of the rights of the Nigerian people, you can always count on some of us to be part of it.
Okay, still talking about human rights issues, which I know it's your turf as a lawyer and a human rights activist. Last week, Afrobeat singer Effiong posted a video where he said he would resist any attempt to arrest him without a court warrant. Let's take a look at portions of that video, which was trending on social media, and I'll come back to you.
See, even if the federal government come for me, they don't bring arrest warrant. If they don't bring arrest warrant, the judge sign, they'll say, dear chairman, I want to see you, director. Now shoot out. I'm saying it now for the whole world to hear. They have to come to my house with arrest warrant.
Okay, so this is an issue that happens almost every time in Nigeria. As we speak, there was a report today online that at least 30 policemen had stormed his residence, but he was not around, so they didn't get him. But what does the law say about arresting someone with a court warrant? The average Nigerian citizen who is a layman in law, who does not understand their rights, when they find themselves in this sort of situation, how should they respond?
What I can tell you is that under the law, for example, in Lagos State, where Mr. Effiong resides and where I practice majorly, we have the Administration of Criminal Justice Law of Lagos State of 2011. I also cite the Police Act of 2020 that has just been assented to, that has just come into force. Under these two laws that I've cited, the ACJL of Lagos and the Police Act, there are provisions regulating or governing arrest. Now, there is what we call indictable and non-indictable offenses. There are also situations where arrest can be effected with and without warrant. For example, where somebody is caught while committing the offense. You do not expect the police to first go to the station and obtain a warrant before they can effect an arrest. If affair is being committed, if people are fighting in the public, if somebody is being assaulted, if a robbery operation is ongoing, if somebody is about to be killed, about to be lynched, you do not expect the police to seek a warrant before they can effect an arrest. So under the ACJL and the Police Act, there are circumstances under which the police can arrest without a warrant. But where, like in his own case, they have not caught him in the act, and I do not really know the specific reason for which they would want to arrest him. So what I'm going to say is this. I believe he spoke in the heat of passion. If you watch the video, he was very passionate. He was very emotional. Right. So for me as a lawyer, I'm usually very careful when, in the interpretation I give to comments that are made in the heat of passion, comments that are made when people are in temperamental or when people are emotional. I understand he was angry. But if he's in his house and the police are to arrest him for an offense they believe he may have committed, I expect them to have an arrest warrant and possibly a search warrant. I want to also assume that if he has a gun, that he has a gun license. Otherwise, that itself will be an offense, because that will offend the Firearms Act, the Robbery and Firearms Act, which governs ownership of guns in Nigeria. So I want to assume that he has a gun license. If he doesn't have a gun license, I hope he gets one soon. Because under this regime that we are, the police are looking for every excuse to trample on the rights of those who are fighting for a better country. So my advice to him is that he should be more circumspect when he's angry next time, so that he does not give these agents of impunity a reason to violate his rights.
Yeah, during the week, Nigerian singer Oma Didia, aka Oma Le, another singer Temilade Okpeni, popularly known as Tems, and their manager Awuni Muyiwa, they were charged alongside 4 Ugandans for holding a music concert in Uganda and allegedly violating the COVID-19 regulations in the country. That issue sparked a lot of outrage on Nigerian social media. A lot of people were tweeting about it, calling for the freedom of that Nigerian artist and the others who were arrested. Omale has also corroborated claims that he had legal permission to hold that concert, which was part of the defense that we saw on social media by some artists like Burna Boy, who were tweeting and calling for him to be released. My question is, was his arrest legal? This is the realm of international law now. What would have happened if the Ugandan authorities did not release this artist and then proceeded to prosecute him? Can you paint a picture for us what would have transpired?
To understand this case, we have to look at the political climate in Uganda. Uganda is not a democratic country by any means, by any standard. Uganda is a dictatorship. You have Museveni, a bloody dictator who has been holding on to power for decades, for over 3 decades. Somebody who believes that he has the divine right to rule over Uganda. A man who should be resting with his grandkids. Somebody who can barely articulate his views, holding the country to ransom, who has completely weaponized COVID and has used COVID as a coverage, as an excuse to attack his opponents. Do not forget that Bobby Wine, who is the major contender, the major opponent of Museveni, that Bobby Wine has also been a victim of this so-called enforcement of COVID-19 regulations in Uganda. So if you don't understand that context, you will not appreciate what really happened. For me, the arrest of Omale and his colleague had a lot to do with the internal politics of Uganda. It was not about COVID. The same dubious charge was also filed against Bobby Wine. Bobby Wine was equally arrested and arraigned in court for allegedly exposing or risking the lives of people during his campaign. Whereas I have seen videos, because I support Bobby Wine, I have followed the Ugandan politics closely. I have seen videos of Museveni, the dictator, going on campaigns with his own supporters, many of them not wearing masks, not having masks on. So if this artist from Nigeria had permit to stage a concert or an event, and the police suddenly woke up to say, oh, that you were violating COVID-19 regulation. I find that to be very ludicrous and senseless, because as far as I am concerned, there was no basis to arrest them in the first place. Given that I understand that the police were actually present at that place.
Yeah, so this is what Bobby Wine tweeted. There is no rule of law in Uganda. This country runs on orders from a small circle of oppressors who dispense orders that are implemented without question. There's absolutely no reason why our brothers should be detained, yet their concert was under police watch. Free Omale. So that's just sort of to corroborate and bring some more context to what you're saying.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is no democracy in Uganda. People are being killed. There has also been attempts on the life of Bobby Wine. So I just see Omale as scapegoats of state impunity. They were just.
But my question is, what do you think would have happened if they had gone ahead to prosecute him? What would have been the legal response?
No, that would have, under international law, there's the principle of state sovereignty that gives every country the right to determine its affairs. So I do not think that Nigeria would have necessarily determined the outcome of the trial. What Nigeria would have done, which is what they did in this case, would have been to implore and engage some diplomatic channels to secure their release, which was actually what they did, which is what every responsible government should have done. But the Nigerian government could not on their own terminate the dubious charges that were filed against them. So it is good that the diplomatic efforts were made to secure their release. This is the best way to go about this. And what the Ugandan government also did was also a violation on the rights of Omale and the other artists who was arrested. But like I told you, we are not going to appreciate the issue except we look at what is going on in Uganda currently. Opposition figures are being arrested, media houses are being raided, journalists are being arrested and detained. This is happening on a daily basis. I follow the Ugandan politics very closely.
So, but going forward, do you think that there are legal implications for music artists? Should they be seeking legal counsel before accepting to perform at events like this abroad?
Every musician, every artist should have a lawyer. I don't understand why any artist in Nigeria, any serious-minded artist or performer will not have a lawyer as part of his team, as part of his management group. All of them are supposed to have the services of lawyers. They are supposed to retain lawyers to advise them, to also guide them, so that even when they are going to perform shows in foreign countries, those lawyers can do some form of checks, some form of due diligence to check what the domestic laws of those countries are and to advise them in terms of compliance. But what we see in Nigeria is that people don't really pay attention to the need to have a lawyer. It is when the problem arises that they begin to resort to a fire brigade approach. So I'm hoping that what has happened to Omale will be a lesson to other artists in the country on the need for them to appreciate the role of lawyers in their career.
Right. So next, let's move on to some other issue that has to do with EndSARS. A Nigerian politician and businessman, a former presidential aspirant under the ruling party, Adamu Garba, has dragged the CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, to court for endorsing and supporting the EndSARS protests. Is there any merit to his case at all?
Only the court can determine. But do you really see what he filed as a lawsuit? For me, I just see it as a comic relief. I do not think that the man who filed this suit believes that he himself believes that he has actually taken anyone to court. In my years of practice, with the little I know about law, I have never seen a court process as funny as the one that I cited. When somebody cites or names a party on a court document, a court process, with the description EndSARS protesters. So what that means is that I seated here, I am also a respondent in that suit. It means that thousands of Nigerian youth across the country are also respondents in that suit. It means that all the people who protested in Lagos, in Kano, in Abuja, in Akwa Ibom, and all over the country, on the day that case is coming up, each of them has the right to go to that court to say, we are part of EndSARS protesters. We are coming to register appearance. We are coming to appear in line with the case that has been filed. So before the court even finish acknowledging all the EndSARS protesters, how long do you think that is going to take before the roll call of the EndSARS protesters is over? So I do not see that as a lawsuit as far as I'm concerned. I see it as, an attempt by somebody to seek fame through a bad means. This is just an attention seeker as far as I am concerned. You cannot, how can you go on Twitter and say, and tell a court to ban Twitter from operating in a country, and you are using the same Twitter? You should begin by deactivating your account. If you are really serious, if you really believe that Twitter should not exist, that Twitter should not be allowed to operate in the country, deactivate your account. But this is even a verified Twitter user, which is why I don't understand what Twitter is doing. I don't understand why they should have unverified him by now. If somebody is saying, I don't want Twitter in Nigeria,
why should they verify him if he has the right to his expression? He has the right to freedom of expression, and Twitter supports.
Exactly the point I am making.
Okay, let's leave Adamu Garba's issue for now. And
no, that is the point I am making. That is the point I am making. If this individual recognizes that there is something called the right to freedom of expression in Nigeria, you cannot be going to court and be telling a court to block Twitter or direct the Nigerian Communications Commission to deactivate Twitter.
Yeah, I see your point there. I was just trying to clarify the whole idea of maybe Twitter taking sanctions against this individual because he has an opinion that isn't that Twitter isn't comfortable about. I wouldn't support that, and I think that goes against the rights of expression that people have, So, but we'll move from that issue to another issue that I want to bring to your attention, which is during the EndSARS protest, there was this viral video of a man that was identified as Olusegun Abiodun Bolarinwa. He's said to be the president of the Yoruba Youth Forum. He was shooting at unarmed citizens during the EndSARS protest in Lagos. But last month, the spokesperson of the Lagos State Police Command, Muyiwa Adejobi, told Pulse, an online newspaper, that no case has been reported to the police. This is what he said. He said, quote, "Let's have complaints physically, and we can deal with that." So, but let's take a look at that video very quickly, and then I'll come back to you with a question that I have in mind. So this is a private citizen. So yeah, so this is a private citizen shooting in broad daylight, captured in video, and the Nigerian police is saying that no one has made any complaint physically, and so they cannot do anything. You are a lawyer. What does the law say about a situation like this?
The excuse of the police is very funny. Nigeria is a very funny country itself. Nigeria is the only country where a law enforcement agency will say, we are not going to enforce the law because nobody has asked us to do so. It doesn't make any sense to me. The first question is, the man who brought out this gun, does he have a license for that gun? Is he a licensed gun owner? That is the question.
Right.
If I carry an AK-47 now and walk on the street of Lagos with my suit or a trouser, and would the police pass me by? Would they not accost me?
Right.
Now, if I decide to release some shots to entertain myself, Not even shooting at people to entertain myself.
Precisely.
In a public gathering, in a public place. Will I not be interrogated? Will the police not trace me? Will they not come to my house? Will they wait until somebody who had the gun being fired comes to them to lodge a complaint? So what they have said is not just plain nonsense. This is somebody who, I'm not certain if somebody died from that shooting, but if someone died, that was premeditated murder. That wasn't manslaughter. If someone died from that shooting, that was premeditated murder. If someone was wounded, that is grievous bodily harm. He should be arrested. He should be prosecuted. Let me ask you a question. Why do we have CCTV cameras placed in strategic places? If crime can only be investigated when there are complainants, when there are individuals who come forward to make a complaint, what is the need for CCTV cameras? Then we shouldn't have CCTV cameras. We can as well dislodge policemen from going on patrols. Why do policemen go on patrols on the streets? Why do they have to stand on the road? It doesn't make any sense to me what they have said. This is somebody who was caught committing a crime. If you watch that video, there was no imminent threat to his life. The people who were running after him, I didn't even see the windscreen of his car being damaged. If you watch the front, there was no, I'm watching the video now, there was no blockage of that vehicle. In other words, even if he was under attack, he had the chance to escape. So there was no threat to his life. There was no attack on his person. There was no attack on his person. So we cannot even talk about self-defense. Self-defense doesn't arise. It is not sequential. It doesn't arise. But even if there was a situation where his life was under imminent threat, there's a principle of proportionality in criminal jurisprudence, in criminal law, that the defense must be proportionate to the attack. Right. From that video that you have shown, I haven't seen someone with a machete pursuing him. I did not even see someone with a catapult. Let alone a pistol. Let alone a pistol or an assault rifle. So what was the threat to this man's life that necessitated him bringing out an assault rifle, targeting people and firing? He should be arrested. The fact that this individual has not been arrested is an indictment on the police. It is a shame on the country. It is a slap on the Commissioner of Police of Lagos State or Ogun or wherever this incident happened. And they should resign. Luckily, yeah. The individual who has been identified, whose identity is known. So if you have to wait for the police, for an individual to send a petition, it doesn't make it, because under the Police Act, the duty of the police is not only to protect life and property, it is also prevention of commission of offense. It is also prevention. Police have the right to prevent the commission of an offense. So if you can prevent the commission of an offense, why are you saying nobody came to you to lodge a report, even when the offense has been committed before the whole world? Before the whole world. So this is a case of class. It's just about class. This is a member of the ruling elite class. And because the police has made itself an elite institution, an institution of the ruling class, they have now given him immunity from prosecution. There is no ordinary citizen in Lagos State who does not enjoy state protection, who does not have political power, who does not have connection, that would have been allowed to get away with this kind of heinous crime. Right. And because this has happened, and this man is not in custody, this man is not standing trial, it is a shame on the country.
I'll move from there to my last question for you tonight. It's almost the top of the hour. In August, you filed a fundamental rights suit against Nigeria's National Broadcasting Commission, the NBC, the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, and the federal government over the imposition of 5 million naira on Nigeria Info FM and the threat to sanction other broadcast stations in Nigeria. You said in a tweet, quote, "Imposition of a fine is a judicial act, which only a court of law can perform. The courts have held in many cases that administrative agencies have no power to impose fines. and that it amounts to a breach of fair hearing for agencies like the NBC to impose a sentence of fines, unquote. I was issued a warning by the NBC for laughing over a funny tweet about President Buhari when I was in Nigeria. The next sanction would probably have been a fine or something even worse than that. What is the status of this case in court? And are you confident that the courts will rule in your favor?
Well, as a lawyer, I cannot have confidence in the courts, because if I don't have confidence in our courts, maybe I should stop practicing. So I have confidence in our judiciary. Our judiciary is not perfect, but I believe that the judiciary will live up to its responsibility. I've brought a legitimate complaint before the court. Luckily, both the Minister of Information and the NBC have joined issues. They have filed what they term their defense. They have filed a counter affidavit to my fundamental right application, where they are saying that I do not have the local standing to complain because I am neither a broadcaster nor the owner of a broadcast station, which is funny to me because in fundamental rights applications, they may not have known that you do not need to have locals. You do not need to show, you are not required to show how you are affected by the action that you are complaining about. You need not be personally affected. In fact, under the FRED rules, the Fundamental Rights Enforcement Procedure rules, any person, particularly human rights lawyers, are encouraged, human rights activists are encouraged to go to court to enforce not only their rights, but the rights of other citizens. So they cannot say that I'm not affected, but I will allow the court to determine that. I am confident that I will get justice at the end of the day. It is a case that I'm willing to pursue to a logical conclusion.
Thank you very much, Barrister Inibehe Effiong, for joining me tonight on The Fix with Ohimai. It's been nearly an hour of discussing issues from the EndSARS protest, the rule of law, human rights in Nigeria and abroad. And it's been my absolute pleasure to have you on the show tonight.
Thank you very much for having me. I wish you the very best.
All right. And for our viewers, thanks again for joining me tonight on The Fix with Ohimai. It's the program where we discuss people, problems, and perspectives. I am Ohimai Amaise, broadcasting live from New York, and see you on our next episode.